Hello, it's Scott Manley here, sitting at the controls of my Aurora LX in Star Citizen Hangar module. Yes, we still haven't had any more flying or anything to be added to the game. No, you can still only look around the spacecraft in the ridiculous levels of detail. There have been some changes to the hangar in the month since it's been released, and we'll go over a number of these. This is the luxury version of the Aurora. Note the leather seating rather than the fabric seating. It's now possible to get some other camera angles on this. Just by manipulating the camera, you can actually see the pilot in his little sleepy area at the back. It may be the luxury version of the Aurora with extra guns and leather seating, but the sleeping area is still tiny and he still bangs his head and it clips through the top of it. There are still many fascinating and interesting bugs in this, but it is 18 months from final release, so it's to be expected. Now, this is the exterior of the Aurora LX. As I've mentioned, it is the luxury version. Note the awesome red trim on this. Very nice. Also note, it is in the deluxe hangar rather than the business hangar. That is because this video is edited together from two different sets of video. That is a thing we do when we're making videos. If you note the cuts, I may be switching back and forth between the business and the deluxe hangar. I don't have the discount hangar anymore, actually. And both of these hangars are, well, one of them is donated, and actually two of them are donated. I have had a couple of people that have donated me the deluxe stuff. Anything in the in the business hangar is my stuff. Everything else is temporarily on loan, let's say. So we're going over, this is something that only greets a very elite group of users. The Pirate Pack, which was sold to original backers, included the Drake Interplanetary Cutlass, which is described as a search and rescue ship. That is, of course, completely bogus. It is a pirate ship designed to hunt down targets, disable them, dock with them, cut through their airlocks, and liberate them off their cargo and possibly their life, depending upon what kind of mood the pilot is in. Note the engines on the rear pods. It's still not clear whether this thing is going to have one engine, two engines, multiple engine pods. The design is changing. Basically, you only have a small statue of it in the hangar. You don't have a fully constructed ship because they didn't have time to make it. But for people that had the Pirate Pack, this would be the only ship they had, so they thought they better have some token object. Moving on, we come to the Hornet, which has just been updated this weekend with some new features. New features are not the fancy camera angles I'm doing. I'm trying to adjust the camera angle over the top so I can actually see the pilot get in, and the canopy now closes so you can get the full feeling of sitting inside the world, the space's best starfighter. Also, you can note from the angle, this is not the most ergonomic spacecraft because he has to lean over to his left to manipulate the throttle controls. This is not a good thing to do in a high G combat situation, let's say. It's kind of interesting. There's clearly a lot of things that will be discovered through the motion capture, that the spacecraft proportions will need adjusted to actually make them functional. It's kind of interesting because, of course, car manufacturers do the same thing. They build up a mock-up and then they realize that, that something's too far away to be reasonably used. So they have to keep on iterating on the design. And in this case, they're having to do it with spaceships. Now, on the Constellation, the mighty Constellation, we have a lot of these displays around. These, of course, tell you about the engine details, engine 1, 2, and KRM, whatever that means. But you have this use icon. What do you think happens when we click the use icon? Well, it brings out the table now. The table is no longer rooted in place. You can actually bring this out and look at it. Similarly, these little containers at the back here have a little button to push as well. Also, full-on engine details on this, but it opens up all the beds. I hope this does not mean that the people are being used as engines. That would be unfortunate. At the back, it's now possible to access the shower area, the water closet, let's say. You can see a little basin there, a nice shower. Caution, floor slippery when wet. Obviously, they still use water in this space era. It's good, which confirms they have artificial gravity on ships, because otherwise a shower like this would be a little dangerous, since the water would just fly around. Now, of course, they have added a toilet, which you can, in fact, sit on. And the funny thing is, you sit down and put your arms forward as if you're holding invisible control control columns. I think what they should do is actually put a magazine in his hand. Actually, specifically, I think they should put all the documentation for the game in there. You know, the game documentation, the star maps, this should be the way you browse it, in my mind. I think I'm going to propose that as a feature for the game, to make all the documentation available from the toilet. Now, using, again, camera clipping, we can actually get a look at the P-52, right? The P-52 Merlin, which I keep on getting confused with the P-51 Mustang, which is a World War II aircraft, which happened to be powered by a Merlin engine. So, confusing them like that is not entirely it's not entirely unexplained. Anyway, the P-52 is a little ship which is carried along with a Constellation. It means that in a battle you can, jump out and fly around, and it'll, engage the enemies on two fronts or something like that. But yeah, that you can just about see the model. The model doesn't appear in the hangar on its own. You can see it has a very nice little cockpit there. Also, by a little bit of shenanigans, it's possible to get in the turret, which the animations are all there for the turret, but they're not hooked up correctly. However, he does go up and pop up into the back here, and unfortunately he's left facing backwards for some reason. But yeah, this turret should have a field of view, which makes it perfectly capable of shooting your own spacecraft. So if you're going to ask somebody to man the turret, better make sure they're on your side, or at least semi-competent, because otherwise you could find them shooting bits of your own spacecraft, I would imagine. Getting an angle on this is kind of a bit harder than before, but that's what it looks like from the outside. It's behind that protective flap. And to actually get that in the demo, you need to do some editing to the game's setup. Now, you may not be able to fly any of the spacecraft, but you can actually drive this little Greycat vehicle around. This is for people who have so many ships that they really they don't want to walk from one end of the hangar to the other. So this is, this makes getting around a whole lot easier. You can actually see over here that somebody's bought some guns and stuff for their spacecraft. You can attach these and remove them with a fitting console. Oh, there we go. I've probably just broken something there. High-end space weaponry, all getting dented up by a little ATV here. So yeah, this is the most you can fly around. You can maybe get a little bit of air on this if you're good, but you're not going to be flying into space with it. Oh, look, it's an Origin 315P. This is the Explorer version of the Origin, which, if you remember, the Origin as a company it's a mythical or an imaginary company in the Star Citizen universe that makes luxury spacecraft. Actually, Chris Roberts specifically said they are like BMW. So they make really fancy ships. The 315P is the exploration variant of the 300i, which you can buy. You can still buy the 315P if you want to pay extra. It's the Pathfinder package. Now, you can see in here, around the cockpit, all the buttons. Look, all the buttons are raised. They're not texture maps or anything. Look at this detail. Underneath here, we actually have this little sensor package or tractor beam or something that's part of the 315 package. You pay an extra $15, I think, or maybe an extra $10 for this, and it gets you a slightly better spacecraft, which is more set up for exploration. And of course, all those extra parts that are built in are insured if you get something with lifetime insurance. That you can see the airlock on the top as well. Similarly, this is the 325A, which is the combat specialized version of the 300 series. It has an extra gun on the front and a couple of extra missile hardpoints preloaded with some sort of weapon system that will no doubt cause all sorts of pain for your enemies as they find missiles on their tail, chasing them down without remorse, unable to do anything but its mission. So yeah, just wandering up here into the interior. I like the black and the red and the grey. I think it looks cooler, to be honest. As the numbers in the 300i go up, they definitely look cooler as the numbers go up. Also note, yeah, more ergonomic issues as he turns this thing. The control column clips through his legs. Yes, no doubt that will be perfected and tuned at some point. Honestly, if they've kept that in, I wouldn't mind. I want to just fly spaceships. You know, if I find that they're holding off the release of the dogfighting module because they're worried about controls clipping through models, I'll be mad. But like, we can just get out here, and if you look carefully, he does kind of clip his head through part of the cockpit. Not that I mind. Let's take a look at those missiles over there. Just climb onto the wing that says "Don't stand here." Oh, well, there. Yes, it has a nice light in the front of it there, so you should be able to see how many missiles this thing carries. Now, the third variant, which you can no longer buy, is the 350R. This is the racing model of the Origin series, and it gets 2 engines instead of 1. So in theory, you can convert a base 300i into a 315 or a 325 just by fitting the right gear. The 350, you can't do that. It's much more lightweight, it has replacement parts, and it has 2 engines in it, so therefore it's going to go faster than almost anything else except for perhaps the M50, which is a super lightweight interceptor that's supposedly a police ship. 350 is no longer buyable at this time, but I like the gold and the black. This is a very, very super high-end luxury awesome ship, seriously. There's only a limited number of these because they're not selling anymore at this time. The only way to get one is if somebody decides to melt it down, then you might get on the waiting list. Or maybe you just have lots of money. I think you can actually buy, maybe it's not a Rear Admiral, there's a Grand Admiral package that includes this as an option, so you can still technically buy it if you're prepared to pay a ridiculous amount of money. Anyway, at the fitting console, I mentioned that you can, take the 325 or 315 and refit. Similarly, you can take the engines and stuff off a 325 at this time, and the guns and the missiles, and you can attach them to that little Aurora. And it, frankly, looks utterly ridiculous. Here's putting everything on here. How about that? Let's just take a quick run over. Obviously time accelerated. Look at that. It looks like some epic rocket engine has been strapped onto the back of, like a Honda Civic or something. That is awesome. I see nothing wrong with this. This is perfect in every way. Let me see how the controls... Oh, wait, yes. Can't actually get into it because the missiles are basically where he sleeps, which is pretty hilarious. You can't get in because he has put missiles in the sleeping compartment. I see no problem with this. I would like that as an option on my Aurora. I would like to be able to put missiles in my sleeping area and, ditch them, use them, or whatever. It's all good as far as I'm concerned. It's all part of the whole modification system that I want to see in Star Citizen. Let's try taking a look. You notice again, this is the regular one, so there's less red. The luxury version is way cooler looking, I think. This one is also a little more beat up with a seat that's kind of damaged and everything. But this is the base ship you start out with if you buy the cheaper package. And remember, you can still buy these packages, and you won't get lifetime insurance unless you're like an original or a veteran backer, but there are nice people that will help you get lifetime insurance if you really want to. There, look at that. That goes all the way out the back there. This makes it a much better spacecraft. I see nothing wrong with this at all. I do feel kind of sad for the Origin 325 that's missing... Well, it's got a giant hole there with maneuver thrusters and stuff hanging out of it. I suspect that something will be done about this in future versions. But I will look at those when the time comes. Until then, I think it's time for me to say I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.